about the.
Sure, I'd like to start. Just want to mention that we're just going to record this so that we can use pieces as we go along, as long as everyone's comfortable with that. So my name is Deacon Duncan Harris, and I serve here at St. Joseph's Church in Penfield. Some of the challenges that I feel that we face is how to bring together our communities, how to create a less divisive atmosphere, to focus on our commonalities, the shared values that we have, to find a way through the myriad of just disrespect that is often had between peoples. Certainly some racial justice is something that we have to address, but being able to be open to dialogue, to focus on our commonalities, to look to how we need to be neighbor to one another. Those are the things that I feel like we need to work on in dialogue, knowing one another, and breaking down the barriers so that we can see each other as children of the Creator.
Thanks, Duncan. Sister Phyllis.
Oh, well, he has said so much. I'm not sure if I can add very much to that. I believe that we need to continue to work together and to name ourselves in such a way that members of our respective congregations will see us as a voice of faith in the community. Because I think sometimes we are splintered. We're splintered in our own congregations, for example. But also, I think we represent the larger voice, and we need to remind our respective groups that we are common in our faith and in our belief for what can happen in our community, especially in regard to race and other issues.
Thanks so much. And Barry, what would you like to say about?
Hi, I'm Barry Swad. I'm the Madrich, or leader of Beth Haskalah, which is the Rochester Society for Humanistic Judaism. And I'm simply say, live your values, be observant every day of your values and live them.
Thank you. And Jonathan.
Jonathan Wabarucha. I'm an elder in Downtown United Presbyterian Church. I think the key challenge, and this is touching upon what many other folks have stated, which is how we have difficult conversations that move us forward, embracing the transformative power of love and justice. It never ceases to amaze me, especially within the context of religion, how one's interpretation of whatever the deity is you believe leads you down that path of embracing that, except or the other path, which is intolerance. And two individuals, same congregation, it amazes me. I think that's having those conversations.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Let's see who else is on board. Deacon David.
I'm sorry, I always forget to unmute myself. I'm Deacon Dave Palma from the Southeast Rochester Catholic Community, which is St. Mary's Downtown, Blessed Sacrament, and St. Boniface churches. When you asked this question, Denny, I was remembering a conversation several years ago when people were beginning to talk about what might happen. And I remember someone saying that it's time for us as leaders, religious leaders and others, to join together for the common good of the community, to empower the voice of the voiceless. And the voice of the voiceless, a phrase that has stuck with me.
Thank you. Ted.
Hi, I'm Ted Polano. I just joined Third Presbyterian Church as associate pastor yesterday. So I'm
Oh, welcome.
jumping
Wow.
in. Beth Laidlaw sent me the link, and I really wanted to, part of my job would be outreach and anti-racism stuff. So I wanted to be able to start to get on board with everything here. And I think everybody has said so many amazing things so far, but having the difficult conversations and the divisiveness within congregations, people taking sides within the churches and synagogues and all, and just how to facilitate that conversation and how to help folks sit in the really, really uncomfortable places and just be in that place as a way of having that grief and pain before we can move forward. So thank you all. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Ted. And Nancy.
I'm Nancy Brown. I'm an elder at the Downtown United Presbyterian Church. I'm a member of a number of justice organizations, including the Justice League at the Downtown Church. And I'm concerned with our lack of collaboration. I'm concerned that it seems like all these disparate groups are siloed and we're not aware of one another. I think we would be stronger if we collaborated.
Collaboration. Thank you.
Mhm.
And Rabbi Peter Stein.
Thanks so much, Denny. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Peter Stein. I serve as the senior rabbi at Temple B'rith Kodesh. Also, I'm the president of the Rochester Board of Rabbis, and as always, honored to be with all of you. In a sense, I would really affirm and express my gratitude for so much of what's been said. For me, a lot of it really comes to how we build authentic relationships with people who are not like us, build relationships across lines of difference. And those aren't always easy relationships. Sometimes that is working in uncomfortable ways, or working where there's agreement in one thing and disagreement in another. And I'm increasingly aware of how important that is, that sometimes we retreat to our comfort zones or reach a point where we say something is a veto and we just can't sit together. But I would say, for me, I want to push those vetoes as far away as possible, because then I don't think we make progress. So not to say there are none, but I think oftentimes we turn to them quicker than I personally would like. And when we think of this group, which has so much potential and such good aspirations and share so many common ideals, I think here too, it's a matter of how we build up the relationships in genuine ways, and grateful for the continuing voices and the new voices and the leadership of those who are with us, and look forward to our conversation today.
Thank you, Peter. And we've got a really stellar set of accords in the Rochester area. We've had the good work of Greater Rochester Community of Churches. We have accords with the Catholic Diocese, with Jewish peoples, and Muslim Christian accords. And there's just been such a remarkable fraternity. I remember, I think it was when Tree of Life Synagogue was attacked. Soon afterward, we all showed up at Temple B'rith Kodesh. And I remember being late because of an obligation at work, and approaching 12 Corners Brighton intersection and seeing people walking on both sidewalks from there towards Temple B'rith Kodesh, 4 abreast. It was a magnificent procession. And we filled the place, and the witnessing was stunning. And I can still remember, I think the girl's last name is, well, anyway, a Muslim girl was one of the many spokespersons, and she was a teenager, and it was just an electric Electric Night. And I know too that when the first Muslim ban was announced, we showed up at Temple Sinai and heard speakers from Muslim, Jewish, and Catholic refugee resettlement groups. We have strong shoulders to stand on in this work we're about. Have I overlooked any religious leaders that are in attendance to share on this topic? Yeah, Rod Froman, my goodness sakes alive. Welcome, Rod. What would you hope that the vision statement would include for ROCAC's Religious Leaders Caucus?
I'm kind of unprepared to respond that specifically, but since I know about half the people who are here, and therefore the other half I don't know, I just wanted to let you all know kind of a change of status. Has Ted said anything yet?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So some changes at Third Presbyterian Church. And I am now the interim pastor head of staff. I have replaced John Wilkinson for another 6 or 8 months until the church gets a new permanent head of staff.
Mm-hmm.
However, and so I will be in the chair, so to speak, in the corner office for another 6 or 8 months, probably through mid-April. However, Ted is here on a permanent basis. And another way to say this is that Ted is now the former Rod Froman at Third Presbyterian Church.
Yeah.
And I was the associate for Church and Society. I retired, then they got desperate and called me back. So anyway, so I'm in this position, and I just want to let everybody know that. But in terms of the person who's really carrying the water here for Third Church and our role in ROCAC's, it'll be Ted.
Okay.
So, but having said that, also I just want everybody to know my enthusiasm for ROCAC's, and some of you know this and some of you don't, but when I was first out of seminary long ago and far away, I worked for 4 years as an Alinsky organizer in Philadelphia.
Oh
So I ran a large organization there right out of seminary. So I really understand the MO of ROCAC's,
Mm-hmm.
and I just, we want to make sure that Third Church is supportive of it and is a key participant, or not a key, a regular participant in the whole process. So that's I think maybe that's the best way to give a statement of support for the direction.
Thanks so much, Rod, and welcome. Glad you're back. Have I overlooked any religious leader in this? Dr. Gale, would you have a word that you want to make sure that we do consider in forming our vision statement?
Yes, I would like to share a word, and I'd like to thank you for calling me towards the end. It gave me time to think. So I would like to add that that we consider the universality of the value and worth of life, and stepping out on faith to actively proclaim that belief, and to use that as a guide when we're selecting issues to stand up for.
Great, thank you. Karen, would you have a word that you want to be sure we consider?
I would echo what Dr. Gale has said and add that I think that at this moment in time, it is critically important that people of faith, especially religious leaders, stand up publicly for those beliefs and those core values and encourage their congregations to do so. I think that we have become so secularized, particularly and siloized religiously, that we have forgotten the calling of God to stand up and to be counted.
Yeah, thank you so much. And now we have Jonathan, who, even though he's not feeling too well, will give us a reflection.
Sure, and it won't be long because I know we have more important individuals on the on the agenda as well today. So I think the theme for what I'm about to talk about is really how you transition between personal acceptance and how you transition from personal acceptance to change in the larger community, policy change, and being an effective public witness. And this is a reflection not only on my own personal journey, but it's going to also dovetail a little bit into the vision. In order to do that, I have to start a little bit on my journey in the Presbyterian Church. Like most young folks, I was pretty much dragged to church by my parents. It wasn't probably until about high school through the confirmation process when I started to truly embrace religion. Through that confirmation process, what I loved about it was they did not shy away from encouraging you to ask difficult questions. And often the difficult questions I would ask is, why aren't we accepting of everyone? It wasn't, why would we accept? It's why aren't we? Why wouldn't we accept our LGBTQ plus brothers? Why wouldn't we accept individuals coming from another country? And through that process, it truly allowed me to not only to embrace, but own what it meant to be a Presbyterian individual. And that led to leadership opportunities, becoming an elder, getting involved with Triennium and other events. But that's what set me on my path truly to where I am now, working with individuals like Nancy, trying to now work with the justice team at Dupsy and make that change that needs to happen. And so I started kind of on this journey, like I said, personal acceptance of all people. Didn't matter who they were. That's just where I started on that journey. Where I struggle is how to connect that with changing the systemic issues that we all know about. How do you change the policy? How do you become an effective public witness? Especially when you know at your core, when you're led by the Spirit, it's to create that world where everyone is under that tent and everyone is accepted and embraced. And so when I looked at the vision statement, there are a couple things that jumped out at me, which was, how do you do that? Well, building partnerships is key, like we've talked about. I think there was another key phrase in there about listening with compassion and empowering. These are all things I think allow you to build upon and build up to being an effective public witness. But this is still honestly something I still struggle with today. And I think it's something that we all struggle with, especially being members of religious institutions. It is something we're called to do, but it's how do we do that I think we struggle with. So that's really my reflection, not only of where I am now, but also just providing a couple comments about the vision statement. I think we can highlight a little more the how we do that. I think there are things in there that I've highlighted that will allow us to become effective public witnesses, but we also need to embrace and understand that we can't just sit in our pews anymore, right? Like these things have been going on for way too long, some of these issues, and unless we step out and become effective public witnesses, breaking down those barriers, building those partnerships, listening with compassion, it won't change. And in fact, as things don't change, they actually get worse. So that's my brief reflection for you all today.
Thanks so much, Jonathan.
And now I'm going to get some tea.
Okay, tea. So we're at the point in our agenda when we want to look briefly at Daniel's Law, Advocates in Rochester Push for Mental Health Response Teams in New York. And Rabbi Stein has sent us Serge's recommendation for many points that we may want to put into our personal or our congregational or even as a caucus affirmation of this law. And it was attached to your Zoom link, all of the contents of that. If you look through, you'll see these attachments. Do you have any questions about it? Is there any discussion about it? Among us, how many people are going to write a letter affirming this law? Okay, Peter Stein and I are writing. Let's see who else's hand is up.
The downtown church has already had a campaign to do this. We've already
Beautiful.
done it.
Thanks, Nancy. That's good news. Anybody else? Okay, so it looks like one congregation and two individuals. Peter, is yours a congregation or an individual?
It's part of our racial justice working group, which is one of our important working groups committees of the congregation. So part of our social action work.
Beautiful. Would it facilitate more of you to sign on if we had a caucus letter to sign? Can I see a show of hands for that question? Dave and Barry would sign on? All right, I'll see what I can do. And would you see what you can do and send it to me? We'll get a circular letter going and we'll form it up, and a few of us will sign it anyway. That's a whole lot better than none. And probably several people beyond us will, because I'd sent it out to the full mailing.
Yeah,
So
Denny, we're reviewing it too.
You are.
Wasn't there a letter earlier from, I thought we signed, and I thought, well, our sisters signed on to a letter earlier that maybe.
Well, Sister Phyllis, would you send that letter to me and I'll compare it to this and see if it, because it may be, there's been so many things that we've signed on to. I don't want to just assume that we've covered this one. I
think maybe it came from Elders and Allies.
Okay, I'd love to see it, okay?
Oh, I hope I have it, but I can probably.
You know how to get it. You know how to find one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, and we don't want to spend any more time on that, but look for a letter or start one and we'll work on it in a circular manner and get it out to you.
Denny, are you going to send that around to everybody in attendance today?
Indeed, I will.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You will be part of the forming of it, and then it will go out to the wider group for signing. We have with us Malik Evans and Dr. Cephas Archie, and I think you've received some communications that it was going to be the mayor, and then the mayor said, oh, she's so sorry she can't meet with us. I got a call as recently as this morning repeating how sorry she is. So then it was going to be Dr. Cephas, and I was overjoyed because we've had him present to us before, and he did a wonderful job. And then I got a message that it was going to be Deputy Mayor James Smith, and now today it's back again to Cephas. So welcome, Cephas. We've asked both Malik and Cephas to discuss some of their favorite Ray's recommendations as to how they are being implemented and how the people with the power to implement them are being held accountable. So why don't we begin with Dr. Archie?
So first off, good morning to you all. Good morning. Well, afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you. This is my second visit, and it is. I enjoyed the first visit, and I was grateful to have some opportunity and some time to spend with the group. I appreciate. I got to go back and tell you how much I appreciated that sort of introductory question that you prompted to the group, because when you focused on it, it made me think about sort of the whole legality of the separation of church and state. That literally our guiding governing documents of the country confirm that we should be divided. And so to hear so many of the people who are on this call reiterate the message that there is a space and a place for us to work together, and the continual dismantling of those silos that have been created really was something that I love to lean into more. And so I have to commend this entire group for really looking at the ways that we are so distinct and that our lanes are so unique, but then recognizing how the partnerships established amongst both can benefit the people. And so this is where I want to recognize the members of RockAx for just that candid discussion and conversation about really dismantling those structures in place systemically that have kept us divided. So the last time that I presented to this group, I spoke about the question that was sort of phrased today, which is reviewing the Race Commission's report. What were the things in it that I saw could be utilized by this group, ones that I felt that were true priorities, that I think we all could have some ownership in. And so I talked a little about that the last time. What I was informed of today is the opportunity to talk about with you all the race reports implementation plan as a whole. And so recognizing that, I do have some time if there are any questions about that implementation plan. But I want to talk a little bit also about just what we're doing and how we're responding to the race implementation plan. So currently within the current race report, there are a total of about over 300 recommendations total. And as of to this date, the city has done a first level of the principal review, which has resulted in us owning 97 of those current recommendations that are listed throughout that report. We have gone through it meticulously with our internal task force to make sure that everyone from RPD to DRIS to our law department to our neighborhood and business development centers are all reviewing this data to confirm that we are responding according to what the report asks. Just to give you a little bit of insight on this, I'll share my screen with you to kind of just to give you a little bit of the depth of what we've been using to go through the sort of report. So one of the things, and I'll blow it up as large as I can. So one of the things that we're doing is for every one of the recommendations that are included, we're requiring the city personnel to be very thorough. So we develop sort of this matrix that allows us to dissect the report in a comprehensive way so that for each recommendation provided, we are having the city internally go through and assess who are the owning entities of that recommendation, who are the external and internal partners that will be critical for operationalizing that recommendation. What are the resources that we are going to need to make sure that we can fully develop and materialize what is requested? What's the level of authority? Is this advocacy or action? Is this a new and or existing program or recommendation that's included? Is this currently a part of our Rochester 2034 plan? And the reason why this question here, this Rochester 2034 plan is so essential is because our commitment is to sustainability. So this race recommendation is a one-time isolated objective, but we're looking at what the spirit of what this report was about. So how are we confirming that the items that we are responding to are embedded into our long-term strategic planning initiatives so that these things become a part of our structure permanently, not just a short-term interim fix of something? Then there is actually quantifying the time frame, who is the specific person that's directly responsible, as well as what is the actual start date between June 1st and August 1st, the next 60 days, per every one of these recommendations that you will have initiated that recommendation into fruition. So it's making sure that we're not talking about these things from a level of vagueness and not transparency, but that we are willing to look at this from a deep dive, fundamental approach for what we are doing to help drive these objectives systemically. And so this is where we will also be looking to say that next phase of this will be engaging our community partners, such as yourself. What we want to do is to make sure that we are not developing a structure or an expectation that the community has to, within itself, wait for us to tell them they can begin to pursue these objectives. But that it's clear that we're saying we want everybody to pursue these objectives. What we're creating is an actual platform where community members can notify us, hey, we're working on this. Hey, we are RMAPI, we're working on this. Hey, we are Urban League, we're working on this recommendation. And the reason why this structure is important is because it leans into our commitment to saying no silos. So that when RMAPI says we're working on recommendation 3A and we get that very same notification from the Urban League, we can notify them both, so that there's not a replication of resources and personnel, that we can help them to work together on these specific recommendations. So we are becoming the conduit for collaboration. And so this is where creating these structures in place and moving now, putting timelines in place, putting, as you are well aware, the city council and the mayor, Malik, thank you so much for your help on that, actually approved the budget last night, where we have earmarked $1 million toward the actual implementation of these recommendations. And so this is where the focus that I have had with respect to this is really developing teeth and a framework and moving this work along to make sure that it's not becoming an isolated silo or something that we place on a shelf, but we're actually moving these things toward operationalization to make sure that we're having the impact for long-term sustainability. So this is just a high-level sort of strategy that we're going to be talking about. I think there's going to be a press release this week or a press conference this week to sort of highlight the overarching rollout plan of what this will be from a system as a whole. So just wanted to highlight some of that in the beginning.
Cephas, Bill Johnson spoke with us the month before you did on RAISE,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
he spoke of the lack of funding, restrictions, and access to needed capital. Is that something that is highlighted in the work of the mayor's team?
So absolutely. So there are two things. There is the money that's been specifically allocated for the race commission, which is the $1 million. But as you are also aware, there is the additional funding that we've received from the Biden administration per the Rescues Act funds. And so this is where we are intending to use those funds to help leverage some of those access gaps to funding. Additionally, there are these additional recommendations that were provided within the Race Commission report, such as the reparations and universal base income research that's being looked into, which was also one of the things highlighted in the dissent letter that I'm currently one of the co-chairs of that aspect. And so again, these things are put in place to look at sustainable structures, not the one time, here's an isolated payment, but how are we looking at ongoing opportunities that can really close these access gaps that have been clearly identified amongst our communities here in Rochester.
Jobs seems to be a very key factor, because where there is poverty, where there is no jobs, there is poverty. And where there is poverty, there's every other social failure.
Sure.
And well, we look forward to hearing more. Who else has a question for Cephas?
To that point,
Malik needs to leave. Can we get to him, please?
Certainly, we will. We will. Yeah. Cephas, you wanted to finish one sentence, did you?
If Malik is on a time frame, I absolutely yield to him because I want to make sure that we hear from our council member.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. I think my assistant made it clear that I have to leave at 12:45. So
I did not know that. I'm so sorry, Malik.
Yeah, he spoke to someone before I got on. So I have to apologize, but I know he did make that clear to someone. I don't know who. So I don't want to be disrespectful and not and just leave off. So I only got about 5 minutes, but I can't miss this 12:45 meeting with these folks. So I'll just say, I think Cephas did an excellent job in terms of laying out where do we go from here as it relates to the Race Commission report. I think the challenge will be in this community. Right now I have on my desk the Crimmy report from the 1970s. Some of you may have been around when that report was released, is how do we make sure that it's operationalized and that there is continuous conversations about this. So 2 years from now, will Rock Act still be having a conversation about the Race Commission report? So while it is Cephas's job and my job and city government to do this, the community also has a role to play, because the community is constant. The community is always here. So I think it is incumbent upon the community to do that. The other thing that I've done is I've spoken to a lot of different groups in the community that have similar to groups to you, folks here that have given their opinions. The Take It Down Planning Committee, they gave me 8 points that I was happy to see. I agree with a lot of those 8 points. So I think the challenge will be for the county and the city going forward is how do you engage folks that were a part of the Race Commission to keep them engaged, and then how do you bring in newer people who also want to be able to participate? I've been involved in a lot of these things for a long time, and it's not easy. So how do you keep the grassroots folks and activists involved, just so that way they know that their voices can also be heard? There is $1 million that Dr. Archie mentioned that is allocated for that. It may or may not be enough, but I think that the county also has a big role to play. They're bigger than the city. So the ongoing dialogue and conversations with the county and city and that connection is absolutely critical to see that all those recommendations are done. 97 recommendations are a lot of recommendations. I mean, they just are, that's a lot. Those are a lot of things to be able to hit. So the challenge for the city as well as the county, in my opinion, will be how you prioritize them, and the sequencing will have to be right. So is our is recommendation 1 take precedence over recommendation 95, and if so, how is it going to happen, and then how is it communicated to folks so they won't think that, oh, they're not getting to all the points. So I think patience is key in this, but I think that I think that there is a blueprint to be done. And then the last thing I'll say is that I think that the fact that this venture is joint between the county and city is absolutely critical, because I always remind people that the city has taken on mental health services in a certain way, for example, PIC teams, but mental health resides at the county, right? Same thing with social services. So for a lot of things that affect people in the city, we can't do it without the support and cooperation with the county. So the interplay between the city and county, it's always been important, but in order for the Race Commission report to be able to really be successful, that interplay and connection is going to be more important than ever in order to make sure that the goals and objectives outlined in the Race Commission report are realized. And I think that if the collaboration continues, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to see some type of needed change, but that's going to be very important. And I'll end just with saying with something that Nancy said. I'm a preacher's kid, Nancy, so I'll say amen to when you said that you want collaboration between all these disparate groups, because that's what we have. I mean, we have groups all over the place. So how can you get them to come to the same page, even if they may disagree on things, but come together around a common agenda? Maybe it's this Race Commission report, which everyone seems to be very high on and interested in seeing advance. Is that something that all of the groups can come together and rally around to say, hey, this is something that we believe in, and we're going to work together on this, even though our groups may have different objectives? So definitely want to agree with Nancy's point in the beginning as I was listening about collaboration among the disparate groups. So that's all I have, but thank you so much for having me on. I greatly appreciate it.
We have one more minute with Malik if somebody has a question or an observation for Malik. Thanks so much for joining us. I thought you had to leave at 1. I did not realize it was
okay.
at 1:45.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, and God bless.
God bless.
So what do you want to say to Dr. Archie, folks?
As they think of that burning question that's on the tip of their tongues, I have a question. Just to follow up on something that Malik said. So the city has 97, the county has over 200. So 200 of the recommendations that were listed in the report are owned by the county. And so what it shows is that a lot of the work that needs to get done, there are independent areas for the city. There are independent areas for the county. And then what we found is that there are collaborative areas that the city and the county must work on together.
Yeah.
So those are the critical partnerships that we have committed to addressing, to Malik's point.
Good. Dr. Gale, what's your question?
Oh, thank you, Dr. Denny. Mr. Archie, I was wondering how the $1 million was determined. That $1 million that's budgeted towards the raise recommendations.
So what I do know is that I don't necessarily have the full detail of the scope of how they came up with that budget. What we've done, so in that spreadsheet that I showed you, do you remember that I started with? Let me show you this from a standpoint that may be helpful in sort of really giving some clarity to answer your question. Thank you. No problem.
And I apologize. It's Dr. Archie. I apologize.
Oh, no, Dr. Harrison, you're fine. That's not me at all. Absolutely, you're fine. So as you see, one of the questions here that's on this chart is resources, right? On this index, right? It says resources. And so as we began teasing through this very early on, I knew that as a part of this plan, to say that we're going to do all of these recommendations without any support, I was like, that's not reality. There is nothing more exciting than an unfunded initiative. So I said, no, can't do that. So what I did is I had each of the areas within the city, and this is how the city was able to determine what our budget could be. So looking at this, as you see, per recommendation, it has resources. And so what I've done is when they said yes, We do need resources. I created a tab at the bottom. You see where my arrow is? And what I did is I had them map out by recommendation what those projected expenses would be. So is this a direct service? Give me a brief description of the funding needed. Is this a direct service or is it a program or a project? Do you need, with the resources, do you need staff personnel? Is this an operational expense? Is it an external community direct service expense? What is the actual dollar amount for this projection of this recommendation? And so this is where, for me, when we really talk about sustainable impact, looking at what we're going to need to effectively make this happen, then the researcher in me, Dr. Harrison, as you know, we need to make sure this stuff is done the right way. And so what I didn't want this report to be is an opportunity to say, oh, we did all of this great work and it was wonderful and that's great and we got these great recommendations and then nothing happens. And so very early on, I looked at this process and saw that we needed to connect every dollar amount to a specific recommendation and have the people that were in charge of leading what we were doing give us the itemized costs of what they projected it would take to make it happen. And so compiling all of that data, I went to the mayor and said, we got to put our money where our mouth is.
It's true.
This is where the data was confirmed to be.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And Dr. Archie, if you could hang on, we do want to hear Karen's report before she leaves. She has to go to a meeting at 1. Karen, are you still on? Karen?
She's there.
You're on, Karen.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm having a cursor problem and it disappears every once in a while, so I couldn't unmute myself. My apologies. Yes, I'm sorry I have to make this quick, but Denny's been asking me to come and update a little bit about the work this year of the Education Task Force for ROC-ACTS. Our focus has been on the superintendent's anti-racism commitment that they made last June, in which they had 6 areas that they identified that all of the superintendents in Monroe County signed on to. We have been in the process of meeting with all of the superintendents to be building relationship and in conversation about where they are with meeting those recommendations, the challenges they're finding, where things are moving well and where they're not. I don't think that there's a lot of huge surprises in that, although one of the real pluses in one of the meetings, we've met with over half of the superintendents to date and have other meetings in process. One of the real high points was our meeting with the Superintendent McGowan in Brighton. Several years ago, they started to do the data work that really is fundamental to being able to document and see where change is needed and being able to see that you are actually succeeding. And they identified the disparity between graduation rates between white students and students of color. And they put in place a plan that was based on individual outreach and contact. And as of last year, which is 7 years after they identified their disparity, last year was the first year that the graduation rate for students of color in Brighton exceeded the graduation rate for white students. And that's a first within the county. So that was a wonderful piece to hear. We hold that up as a goal for all of our districts, that we really identify where those areas of need are. And the really exciting thing from our standpoint is it wasn't about spending more dollars. It was about being engaged with those students in a real and a meaningful way.
Yes.
And that was what made the difference in those graduation rates. They're now currently really looking at trying to do the same kind of thing around participation in AP courses, participation in extracurricular activities, looking across all of those areas to make sure that they are moving in the right direction and trying to build meaningful relationship with families, the parents and the families of those students as well. We certainly have a long way to go within the county. And one of the things that has come up and is an area that I was asked to bring to religious leaders, because the feeling is that your work could be fundamental in moving it forward, is the fact that so often the voices that are most heard are the voices against, those that are seeking to curtail the work on bringing strong anti-racist curriculum into the schools, to have truth and history. All of those pieces are critically important, and sometimes the naysayers are heard more often than those that stand up and support it. And again, as I had said earlier, it's important that we stand up and be present, and encourage our congregations and other people to be standing up and be present. Superintendents are hearing much more frequently now from those people who are against anti-racist curriculum than they are hearing from people who are for anti-racist curriculum in many of the county districts. So we would encourage people to reach out and do that. We sent recently a letter to the superintendents to encourage them to look at the Zinn project, which is a pledge by educators to teach truth, and is a response against those states that have started to pass laws against critical race theory, so that we again encourage congregations and religious leaders to be actively engaged, and encouraging other educators within their curriculum and their programs to consider signing on to that pledge. I will share that information with Denny, and she can distribute it to the list so people have that information. We are in the process of also looking at trying to reach out to educators in various districts directly, into our parent groups with that information to encourage that. So in our remaining districts, we are looking and trying to create groups that will be liaison groups within all of the districts, so that if you have individuals in your congregation that are interested in participating and being part of those groups, building relationship within those districts, our goal is to make sure the work gets done. And often we think of that as an adversarial relationship, and we look at it as a collaborative relationship. We want to be part of changing minds and hearts, and we want to make sure that our children get the education that they need and deserve to move forward. We cannot be a strong and effective democracy if we are not educated in the truth. So all of those things are very important to what we do. Our group generally meets 2 weeks of the month, the 2nd and the 4th Thursdays at 6 p.m. We're still meeting via Zoom. Anyone that's interested in participating, again, just let Denny know, and she will connect your name with me, and I will make sure you get on the distribution list. My next meeting is the 24th at 6 o'clock. And so we continue the work. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them for you.
I want the caucus to know that the Education Task Force is highly collaborative. They work shoulder to shoulder with Children's Agenda and other groups. All of our task forces are in sync with working shoulder to shoulder with other groups. Yes, who was it? Gail who was
right? It was me. Karen, could you say the name of the school district that had that great response to Black students' graduation rates?
That's Brighton. Brighton.
That's Brighton. Okay, thank you.
No questions for Karen?
I think Reverend Froman is waving his hand, and I don't want to.
Oh, sorry, I missed you, Rod.
Well, I have a general comment on Karen's piece. That's very encouraging about Brighton School District. That's wonderful news. As I'm listening to her report, as well as listening to others, as particularly the 97 issues from Ray's and then the 200 from the county, I'm thinking, okay, there has got to be a way in which congregations like ours can specifically attach themselves to the 1, 2, or 3 of those 297 ways to get involved. So, is that kind of one of the expectations of laying out all of this so that congregations can find a place to jump in? And that's kind of a general question. I know if Dr. Archie, that's kind of question for you, but also for others. And if so, then I would covet, that's one of the 10 commandments, but anyway, that I'm breaking. I would covet all 297 of those items to have those.
So if I could just jump in really quickly. So yeah, I would covet too, but I would add this statement. So one of the things that I stated earlier that we're doing as sort of that next step is we're creating this online sort of platform where people can notify us after, of whatever recommendations they are intending to work on, period.
All right.
So what that will, as stated earlier, what it will do is it'll allow us to sort of create these great hubs of information, of people and partnerships and collaboration. Right. So exactly to that point is one of the things that I want to build to.
That's wonderful because people come to you after a sermon and they say, what can I do? Well, all right, there are 297 things to do.
So, but in response to that, to add on to that, Rod, I think is a great point. So pages 57 to 66 of the report, what we did is that there were a total of 9 working groups that did research. And so we individually reviewed all of their findings of all of the separate working groups, job creations, mental health, policing, all of these things, right? And, the researcher in me said, so of these 9 things, are there sort of some common denominators?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That we found across the report, right, so that we can say, yep, there are all of these individual things, but the reiterated common themes that we found were these specific things. And so on page 57 through page 66, those common cross-cutting themes are outlined specifically. That said, overall, these are the overall challenges that we have identified, not just within one sector, but across all sectors. And so I would encourage you to start there, to say, even though there may not be a specific recommendation that says my congregation specifically needs to do this, what it's showing is that there are these things that are impacting everybody, that are across the board. And so if you wish to have people say, where do I go, or where do I start, or what can I do? Even if you don't have a specific recommendation that you're doing, say, I looked at those specific themes, and this is what my congregation can do for this theme. This is what my congregation can do for that theme, so that it allows us to have a true developmental approach to changing the system as a whole versus just as one of the smaller sectors.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful because as we all know, congregations are notorious of wanting to do their own thing, and what we're trying to re-educate here at Third Church in terms of collaboration around the community and partnerships, as Jonathan said.
You all
education. Karen made a point earlier about, and Karen, I so appreciate that. So within the Race Commission report, there's a section on education. And in that education work group, it focused specifically on Rochester City School District, about things that Rochester City School District needs to do to improve equity based off of race. So although it was focused on RCSD, now that we have the report, we're convening all school districts, because just because it was written for RCSD does not mean it's not applicable to Brighton and not applicable to Arundequoit and all of these other areas. And so a response that we're doing as of this Friday, there is a meeting with all of the school districts to say, yep, we researched RCSD, but what we found is that there are many of these things, almost all of them, that all of the surrounding school districts do not have as well. And so really having this be a meaningful impact, the collective impact that we're trying to make, how are we bringing people together to say, this is the framework that we would actually ask you to rely on and look into as well for application in your area?
If there's anyone that has not studied the Raise Commission report, you can Google RASE, Racial and Structural Equity Commission, and you can access a link and read the whole thing online. And since that's rather tedious for some, I do have one hard copy extra that it's on my front porch for whomever wants it. So let me know if you need it, because I do have a hard copy.
In addition to that, because I know that you reached out to me before asking for some copies. So one of the things that we were able to do tentatively, just because I'm all about equity, I'm all about where are we putting this information so the people have access to it. So one of the things that we did is we had the entire report translated into Spanish, every word, so that again, how are we making this a digestible, accessible document for all community members? And so that's currently uploaded now on the Rockways webpage, number one. Number two, what we have also done as of this week is I have worked with the county to print out hard copies of the report to make sure that at every one of the city and county libraries, there is at least one printed hard copy, so that if you can't make it to someone, or if you don't have the resources, if you can just make it to your local library that's nearest to you, there is a hard copy there for you to review as well. You can't take it home, but if there is the people who have sort of impairments of visually, or just prefer to read something on paper versus on a screen, absolutely. So the accessibility is a component that we've also thought about, and it's now embedded into each of the city and the county's libraries at a copy.
Are there any other questions or observations for Dr. Archie?
Yes, I'd like to know what groups, what formal groups of parents or unions within the city, like the teachers union, have you included in this work?
So that's a good question. So per the 9 working groups, every last one of them, everyone from law enforcement, everyone from teachers unions, everyone from our unions in our financial areas, when we were beginning to collect data, we can't go out and make recommendations without first doing our thorough research to say what is and what's not. And so in order for us to reflect accurate information, we incorporated all of this into the community engagement component of the race reports development, where there were public forums held, there were surveys distributed, there were individual meetings with the critical stakeholders that were brought to the table to say what is in place now that you say we need to provide some tweaking or some feedback to. So yes, that was a part of the Race Commission's development of the process. Even our police unions, even our personnel within city government, from county government to RPD to the sheriff himself was one of the Race Commission members. It's all of those structures that we really wanted to make sure that we had a collaborative representation of what this work was to be. But great question, Ron. Great question, Barry.
Kim, have you any parting words that you want to say before you dash out to your next meeting?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
I'll just say hello to everyone. I'm representing the League of Women Voters. So I'm jumping in really on late notice, getting up to speed a little bit here, but I hope that we can be a value add to this process as well.
Yes, good. Thanks so much. Thanks for joining us. We'll be in touch. Have we anything else to say on Raise? It is an overwhelming project, but then again, what it is confronting is more than overwhelming, and it's been 400 years in deserving our attention, our undivided attention. So
if I could add one final piece,
please.
and I think this follows up to the point that I think Malik was stating, which is in reference to, let's see if I can pull this up here. Share. Do you see the PowerPoint that says phase 3? Okay.
Yes.
So one of the things that we've done, and as we talked about earlier, phase 2 will be actually engaging the community to see what components of the report the community would like to lead, would like to be a part of. And then the third phase of the implementation plan will be the establishment of a race implementation council. So that what it will do is it will be comprised of 1/3 of the members who were initially served on the race commission itself, so that they can be able to give the feedback to say, this is what we meant when we wrote it. This is what our charges were. This was the guidance we provided. 1/3 of that governing council will also be sector content experts. So people who are part of our community who work in these areas to be able to provide sort of expertise on how these things are being implemented. And then thirdly, and not least importantly, is our community stakeholders. So he spoke about wanting to make sure that we incorporated community personnel, groups that were really of the community that had a core functionality of what the going forward component would be. And so this council will be sort of a body that oversees the race work. So are we doing what we said we would do? And are we doing it with fidelity? Are we being accountable? And so as you see, there are no county and or city personnel on this list. This will be a council that we are developing for the community, of the community, so that the community has a voice and a say-so over what these things look like going forward. And this exactly speaks to what the thoughts of our current city councilman stated of saying, well, we need to make sure, checkbox, we're doing that to make sure that these changes are reflected going forward permanently and sustainably. So I wanted to highlight this as well as a part of, showing you the thorough nature of how we've processed this really intentionally to make sure that if we're doing it the right way. We're doing it with the people that actually should be owning it, and we're including their voices as what this could be and will be going forward.
Cephas, could you make the PowerPoint available to us?
Yes.
Thank you.
I will be able to distribute this to you. You're actually getting the heads up or the prequel to, because this is what's going to be announced in the formal press release or press conference probably on Friday. And so you'll be able to say, we saw it first, we heard it
That's
first.
great.
Dr.
That's
Archie
great.
brought it to
Well,
the
we were the second group. We were, the raised recommendations were presented to the county exec and Mayor Warren on March 18th and to us on March 19th.
Sure.
Bill and Muhammad spoke with, Muhammad is part of our group. He's part of the
Good.
planning team, and he is recovering from heart surgery.
Sure.
So let us all hold him in prayer. So yes, I will email it out if you email it to me.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
There's lots to talk about and lots to work on with the Raise Commission, but we have a couple of other items on our agenda. And one is first I want to thank you, Dr. Archie. Your spreadsheets and your enthusiasm and your committed follow-through process is exactly what I've been hoping for. You're an answer to prayer, because I remember Bill Johnson saying to us March 19th, we need accountability in 3 months and in 6 months. And today is 3 months.
Yes, ma'am.
And we have, in every system any of us have ever been a part of, there have been commissions. And then there are commissions a year or so later and a year or so later. And some of them don't build on the ones from before. This one is including our MAPI and seems to be going in a lot of right directions. And it's of such importance. And I commend you, and I commend all of our religious leaders for being present to have this conversation. And we'll do it again. Thanks so very much. You're welcome to stay, but I know that you have meetings to attend.
I do, but I would be remiss for not making sure you heard from me how we are grateful for you. We are grateful for the advocacy. We are grateful for the momentum this group has added to this work. I take this work personal.
Yeah.
Just like when it comes to balancing a budget, We are very meticulous with every line and where's the money going, and we do that faithfully every year. So that very same rigor that we would do for that, I have embedded into this report to make sure that the very same tenacity, the very same fidelity and due diligence, and creating the people in place and creating the partnerships such as the one that we're having now, this discussion, to really help us to really bring it to fruition of what it's intended to be. Not just in writing, right? But what's the spirit of this report, and what's expected to be. So I thank each of you. Again, I apologize on the mayor's behalf. The reason why there was such a merry-go-round of people who were coming is because today is the graduation of our students. So the city has a partnership with our CSD that we do interim internships for 6 months of students who are both developmentally and learning disabled, where we train them for a 6-month time frame. And today, those developmental students from our CSD are graduating. And so I was the MC for their graduation today, and the mayor is the keynote speaker for their graduation today. And so that's why both of us were like, all right, we want to be at RockX, but we got to be there for these students and kids who've been here, you know, graduating on this day. So their graduation was at 12 noon today. So we apologize, and we both said, all right, so I'll do one and you do the other. So we conquered and divided today. But that's the only reason why she wasn't here. But thank you. We appreciate your patience and all of your support. And we look forward to working on this with you going forward.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
Thanks much.
Have a good day, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.
So, folks, we have a leadership assembly coming up in October, and I've given you the dates, and I want you to come back to me with your availability on all of these dates. And that's October 5th, 6th, 7th, 12th, and 13th. And they're in your agenda. And I would love for you to email me back from the agenda saying your availability on those dates, because we want this leadership assembly to take place when religious leaders are available. And we also need a religious leader to be on the steering committee to plan that leadership assembly. RockX needs to have at least one leadership assembly every year. And we have to hear from a listening campaign what the issues are. We're pretty much aware of issues, but we need to hear very specifically for the work of our task force, for the work of RockX, what is most essential to put our attention into. And we will, at that leadership assembly, elect a steering committee then for the next year. So if you choose to serve on it for the October leadership assembly, you would be elected for 1 year from then. And then we could have a turnover and elect somebody else the following year. But please give this consideration, because people of vision need to be on this small steering committee to make sure that the leadership assembly happens, that it's well orchestrated, that it's very inclusive, and that it does in fact clarify the issues and set a pattern, set a theme, a goal for RockX work. We've been working along without an executive director, without a lead organizer, without a community organizer. The only person on our payroll is a half-time executive assistant. She does the internal work. And so we have to take, us volunteers, take up the work of a lead organizer for this time being until we hire one. So please let me know if you would be willing to work on a steering committee, a small group, to make sure a fine leadership assembly takes place in October. And everyone give me all of your available dates from October 5th, 6th, 7th, 12th, and 13th. So we're sure to set a date when most religious leaders can attend. And now we have Asim. Oh, we have Asim. Give a report from Poverty Jobs Housing Task Force. And then he has a special favor to ask of us.
Thank you, Dr. Mack. Good afternoon, everyone. Just briefly regarding the task force and the upcoming work that we're looking to do, our MAPI has a campaign to increase the minimum wage for all of the major employers here in the region to $15 an hour by 2022. We as a task force see this as a important campaign, as it was already expressed in Dr. Archie's report and the feelings of others here in the group regarding poverty as one of the major factors to residents here in the region not being able to live a healthy lifestyle. And this is something that we would like to support their work. I had a conversation with Dr. Harrison, I believe last week it was Dr. Harrison, maybe 2 weeks ago. We will be scheduling a meeting with the director of our mapping, Ms. Aqua Porter, to get a better understanding of how the task force can support their work. I also yesterday had a conversation with one of the staffers from the AFL-CIO to see if there is also support from labor that we can have towards this campaign. We're going to be scheduling a meeting between myself, the director for Metro Justice, as well as Ms. Porter at a later point to figure out what a ground game could look like for this. And bringing in all three of the factors to support the campaign. Currently, they're looking to have at least 10,000 employees at $15 an hour by the end of this year. They're a little more than halfway there. So once again, we see this as a great opportunity to lend support towards the campaign. I'll stop there if anyone has any questions.
Just that it affirms what the raise recommendation is for that living wage.
Yes, exactly.
The city of Rochester apparently has it, but the county has it, or is it vice versa?
Vice versa.
But okay, yeah. But it's one of the areas that is very important. It's urgent.
Definitely. And we see this, as something that once again, there are already more than half. It's around 5,500 employees are already at 15. So, the work is already going on. This is just a great opportunity to continue to build out the education awareness. So once I have a conversation with Ms. Porter, figure out exactly, once again, how we could best assist, we'll be generating a flyer that I would just ask the group if you could please disseminate this to your congregation. And we want to ensure, once again, that people are just aware, and then later on to have more actionable items for us to do going forward.
Yeah. RockAx Poverty Jobs years ago, long before you were a part, demonstrated for raise the wage, and we won it. That was,
oh, is that right? Didn't know that.
Yeah. We met at the University of Rochester and had some speeches and some songs, and then we walked.
Oh wow! Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, we'll definitely have to get. Yeah, well, I definitely have to get the crew back together then, because it's definitely some more stuff going on.
We're up for it.
Sounds great. So taking off that hat, my ask for folks who don't know, I am a healthcare advocate for the Healthcare Education Project, which is labor management collaboration of 1199 SEIU and the Greater New York Hospital Association. One of our big focuses is building education awareness in the community around various health threats and ways to combat them. One of the biggest health threats that we see currently in our community is COVID-19, this pandemic. Obviously, even speaking to the choir here, we all know what the past year has been like for us and our community. And we want to ensure that as many residents have the accurate science behind this vaccine and are able to make well-informed decisions for themselves and their families to be vaccinated. Not pushing anyone to take the vaccine, but once again, just ensuring that they have the correct information so they can make an informed decision. One way in which that we would like to do that going forward is to have video testimonials from residents here in the region who have been vaccinated, just to briefly talk about why you got vaccinated, why you feel it's important, and then how you feel this will better support our communities. This will be a quick PSA. I'm just asking folks if you'd be willing to do a very short 20 to 30-second video. Once again, just answering those 3 questions. This is something that we're doing across the state. We're working with an organization out of New York City. Oh gosh, just that fast, their name escaped me. Oh my goodness. What is the name of this organization?
That's okay. You've done well informing us. So we volunteer to do our video testimonials.
Yes, I certainly volunteer, and I bet Deacon David and Deacon Duncan and Reverend Ted and others would be willing. And let's do that. But first, we have a membership pitch from Dr. Gail Harrison. Is that okay, Asim, if we have
Yes.
one report before we start the filming?
Sure.
Okay, Dr. Gail.
Dr. Gale, you're on mute.
Thank you, Deacon Duncan. I was just talking away. When I attended this meeting a couple of months ago, there were about 20 or 25 people that were on the Zoom and were not members of ROCX specifically, but were participants with the Religious Leaders Caucus. And so today, in contrast to that, there are representatives from DUPSI, Third Presbyterian, TIAR, and SEIU. And I may have missed Sister Phyllis, but everyone on this call today is a member of ROCX.
Okay.
And so what I would like to do is to share with you that one, this is the form, and two, because you are members within your congregations, individuals who are interested in education and advocating for poverty, jobs issues, and advocating for justice systems, they can join and become part of those task forces. There may be others that you know of that are not in your congregations who are interested and have a passion for racial injustice issues who can join on an individual level. And so the individual membership is $30 and the low income membership is $12. So there are two ways for our task forces to populate, for the Leadership Assembly to populate, so that ROCX can be strong, not only in terms of our advocacy, but in terms of our financial strength, so that we can continue the work that we're doing. We do have office space, and it is a very accommodating and low rent. It's at DUPSI, so we're supporting indirectly through that. We do have a part-time internal organizer. She's 15 hours a week, but we have some other expenses, for example, insurance and liability and things like that, that an organization of our size needs to do. So if you can spread the word, and I can present this again, or it can be sent out, that there are these two levels of membership. And we are encouraging our current members to feel free to let their congregations and members in the labor union, that they are free to come and join the task forces. And I would also urge everyone to remember and to consider that there is an individual membership. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gale. And now, Asim, get your video rolling. And who's going to be the first one to say they are vaccinated and encourage others to be vaccinated? Sister Phyllis, are you first?
Well, actually, Dr. Mack, because I'm not sure how to take the recording from here, would it be possible if I could send to you just a brief description, explanation of how to go about the recording? And if folks would just be willing to please email me back your video. It explains how you should position your camera and the questions in which we'd like for you to ask.
I think
I mean,
I think
answer,
that
excuse me.
might be the best way to do that.
Great.
Thank you.
Very good. Very good. This has never happened before that we have 3 minutes before closing. A gift of time. It's been good to be with you. We have Juneteenth on Friday, and please honor that in your own way. Get together with other folks if you can to celebrate Juneteenth, the day that Galveston finally found out that 2 years previous, all of slaves were emancipated. It takes 2 years still to get good messages across. Sometimes it takes far longer. Sometimes it takes 400 years. Thanks for being with us today. And if you can join us for a Black Lives Matter silent vigil at Assembly Drive and Route 64 in Mendon at noon till 1 on Saturday. See you there. Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to gathering again in mid-July. Is noon on the 3rd Wednesday of July good for you? All right. Okay. And you'll hear from me with Asim's directions on how to take a beautiful video of yourself. And you'll get some other mail from me too. And do email me with those October dates that you are available for Leadership Assembly, and if you might be willing to serve on a steering committee for that. And we'll keep in touch. Send one another social justice stuff, because it is constitutive of the gospel. The Jews are the repairers of the world. I mean, this is common to all faiths, to take our civic responsibility to be for one another. Thanks for coming, and God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you, Danny. Most
Thanks.
appreciative.
Thanks.
Good meeting.
Thank you.